All right, well, let's check out this video here, guys. This is from Willie saying, not the discovery I was hoping for. Okay.
Video, we are just past 2 weeks into Season of Discovery, and it has been an amazing ride so far.
Yeah,
there has been raiding, PvPing, and just trying to figure out how best to play my class, given all the new runes and abilities. And everyone else has been figuring out their classes too. And it's really starting to show. So today's video was one I was on the fence about making because I know we are so early into the season and things very well may change in the near future. Again, it's been about 2 weeks and we've only had a handful of raid resets. I also fully appreciate many players won't have had the chance to hit level 25 yet, and that is fine. But myself, I like to look at the numbers. I like to see how different classes are doing out of interest and to get an idea of how Season of Discovery really has impacted the game so far, and it is trending in a certain direction, I will say that much. I also realised the devs in the season didn't set out to make a near perfectly balanced experience where we are all within a few percentage of each other on the damage meter.
I mean, if they did that, we literally would not have gotten, like, we would have gotten a PTR. I like that it's been so just, we figure stuff out as we go and we're gonna tune the classes as we go on, right?
Or do I expect that from Classic, to be honest? In fact, Agrend himself has been clapping back at people jumping to conclusions about how their class is performing already, and I love to see that directly from somebody who's in charge of this game. As a follow-up to that, just before I was about to release the video, Blizzard have done a huge round of buffs for some of the classes suffering most in the current raid tier. I guess if we throw them enough extra numbers, eventually they will work. But I still think there are likely to be reoccurring problems. But today I want to talk about something which I think is worth giving feedback on, because right now it's more than just X class good, Y class bad. And again, I'm sure they are aware of this and have plans for changes, but I think in the interest of the season being a great experience for everyone, this is a topic worth bringing up. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Watcher of Realms. Watcher of Realms is a free-to-play strategy game available on PC, Android, and iOS, where a new experience awaits for fans of role-playing games, MMORPGs, and many more. Watcher of Realms features immersive graphics and lifelike 3D models, so you can really appreciate the world that you are stepping into. Watcher of Realms' special feature to stand apart is a 360-degree real-time operational battlefield. Players can control a whole variety of heroes whose different characteristics can be used to manipulate land, water, and sky. Each hero can contribute different bonuses to different maps.
People on YouTube are so mad that you watch these. Why?
They are fast to level up and to get to grips with, so you can experience action and strategy anywhere. Watcher of Realms places great emphasis on players' gaming experience, and is committed to creating a time-saving and user-friendly hero development system. A large number of free, powerful heroes can be obtained in the early stage. New to the game is the Christmas event, which will feature seasonal decorations, extra rewards, new skins, and the ability to earn powerful legend.
The thing is I don't get, okay, like, I don't understand, because you can literally just skip it in the video. Like, I get it on a stream. Like, if you're watching a stream and you're having an ad, it like goes over the content, but in a video you can just skip it, right?
Hero shards just for logging in. On top of that, there is also the new boss rush event where you can approach several encounters in a row to see how well you perform. There is even PK activities as well, and 2 groups of well-known influencers are competing for rich.
Hey, who's that? Hey, who's that right there? I did a sponsor for this game too, man. Okay, I did a sponsor on YouTube for this game, so
rewards. You can choose the camp you support using the link in the description below and win amazing rewards. You can download Watcher of Realms for free using my link below and get started in a whole new world with a new experience for all. Many thanks to Watcher of Realms for the sponsor today. Let's get back to WoW. So then, let's bring up the picture. Warcraft logs Black Fathoms deep over a ring.
Okay, before he gets into the nitty-gritty stuff here, because I know what he's going to complain about. He's going to say, oh, all the melee classes are so OP, and all the casters are, you know, not OP. What we gotta realize as well, and I think what is something that is very important to emphasize before we get into the video and the discussion, is we are level 25. Okay, most classes are not good because first of all, they don't have their full toolkit yet, and second of all, casters are really, really bad because they don't have their max ranks of skills. Same thing on my shaman. My lightning bolt rank is really low rank, my flame tongue is really low rank, so therefore it doesn't do enough damage, right? Melee classes are very good in the early game, especially if you can get a lot of strength and agility gear because it scales so well. And there's not many ways you can scale with caster stuff, right? Not at least not in the early levels. So I think it should be a lot more important to focus on the later game, right? Because this is still the early game. It might be the meta right now, and it might be the end game for us right now, but it's not supposed to be the end game forever, right? Especially when all caster is behind one boss. Yeah, it's phase 1, right? I just wanted to get that out of the way real fast. A big problem is the mana pool as well. Yeah, people go super fast, but again, that's because we're so low level. Once you get higher level, it'll not be a problem. Right.
You have 2 weeks, 95th
but it's still interesting.
This is how the top 5% performers for each class are doing. There's a pretty big gap between the top and the bottom. That's the first thing you'll notice here. But that isn't really the point I want to get across, because we can change this down to 75th percentile here, or even 50th. And it's a similar story as to which classes are the ones doing well. The point is that in every example, the classes at the top deal mainly or entirely physical damage, and the classes doing not so well deal mainly or entirely magical damage. Yes, there are some outliers here, such as the poor boomies or shadow priests, but it's not just a well buff those classes issue here. Every single caster is worse off than melee, with the one exception perhaps being warlock. Why are they doing better? Probably because they have life tap and can get a lot more mana back during a fight. Also,
yeah, it's also as well, it's very good, a good part as well. Like the bosses had a lot of resistances in the beginning. They have 75 resistances to all the schools, right? Which also like makes it harder for casters. Whereas melee has an option to get so much plus hit gear, which normally they wouldn't get at this level. You wouldn't get like a full set with like a bunch of hit gear, which makes obviously like white attacks and ranged attacks a lot more easier to deal with.
Warlocks are the only caster who can use 2 runes in their main rotation, Incinerate and Chaos Bolt. And if you can get away with only using runes to deal damage as a caster, you very much want to do that. We'll talk about why later. The other big outlier is Enhancement Shaman, which isn't keeping up with other melee. Why is that? Well, if I had to guess, most of their DPS buttons are still spells, and they have a mana bar to contend with too. Now, there will always be a best and a worst DPS. That is how World of Warcraft works. Always has, always will do. But from what I can see at the moment, casters are generally worse than physical damage dealers. And though we are very early into the season, I know that melee outscale casters by a pretty big margin. And
that's a good point, Quex, I'm sorry as well, like to bring that up. I think it actually could be a way of going about it. It's like increasing the armor a little bit of the bosses or something. If you want to like equalize the leveling field, or like the damage field a little bit for everybody, you could give the bosses more armor, right? Because if you just gave it more health, then it wouldn't matter. You know what I mean? It's because we have no filler attack. Other melees have a filler. Well, the big thing why melee classes are so good is because the main majority of their damage is melee. Right, that's a really, really, really big like part of like the damage. You can use your wand, but then you can't use your skills, right?
The caster gear that can drop is insane. I mean, pretty much all the gear from BFD is crazy, but check this out, for example. The new epic staff that drops is so good, it would have been level 60 pre-bis back in 2019 Classic.
Wait. No way, really? It's actually that good. I mean, it's missing the crit, obviously, but that's insane. It's better than Staff of Jordan. Yeah, it's not actually, like, it's not obviously, like, you know, but that's strong.
For every single caster. This is including Diamond loot. And we can get that at level 25.
That's insane.
The epic sword that drops is amazing too, but you're gonna replace that at level 40. Even if Blizzard didn't put new weapons in the game, there are better choices. Then again, it is a bit hard to compare weapons between casters and melee. One of them is very dependent on their weapon for damage, the other not so much. And I know, we're level 25, right? We've got new runes coming in the future, But when we level up, everyone gets more powerful. Shadow Priest's underlying issues are not going to be fixed when you get Shadow form. I'll just say that right now. So what's the deal then? Why is physical good, caster bad? The first point is spell ranks. Spell ranks existing can put casters in a position where they're just short of being able to rank up their main damage dealing ability.
This is the biggest one together with mana, I think.
Something I'm sure you've noticed with runes is that they just scale up as you level, and they do not have spell ranks. On top of that, they cost 1% of your base mana instead of a flat value. And in a larger number of cases, rune-based abilities are going to be significantly more mana efficient to use than your standard class spells.
Spell ranks is the same for melee. Yeah, but again, as melee is like the most of your damage is melee. Like still, even if you're a rogue, yeah, you have a low rank Sinister Strike, it still does melee damage, right? It still scales with your melee weapon.
Ability for spells to scale and not need to be ranked up is a change from Kata, by the way, and base mana usage came from Wrath. Now, getting a new spell rank is kind of a big deal. For me, on my Warlock at the moment, my best rank of Shadow Bolt is rank 4. Learned at level 20. It does 92 to 104 damage. The next rank is 28, which I can't get this phase, and that deals between 150 to 170 shadow damage. So we're talking the difference between me having a button that does on average 98 damage versus one that does 160. Now for melee, however, spell ranks are not such a big deal, as a ton of their abilities are tied to stuff such as attack power or weapon damage. Take Rogue, for example, and Sinister Strike. The best rank they can get by 25 is rank 4, which does weapon damage plus 15. The next rank at level 30 makes them now do weapon damage plus 22. So the difference between these two ranks for the Rogue is 7 flat damage. The difference between the two Warlock spells is on average 68 damage. So all in all, spell ranks are very impactful. In fact, Warlocks don't even press Shadow Bolt. Take it off your bars, put Incinerate on. It costs about half as much mana and deals more damage. And this spell rank difference between melee and casters is across your whole spellbook too. This is just one example so you can see the difference. 25. On top of that, this isn't just a kind of, well, it's like this at 25, but it'll be better later, as each new level cap introduces new breakpoints where casters are short on getting new spell ranks.
That's because the game isn't meant to be played as a level cap of these level caps, right? It's like a completely new thing. You're supposed to have your full build at 60, right? That's when you have all your max ranks and everybody has all their stuff, right?
Whereas melee just kind of don't care about them that much. It's only at level 60 when things begin to even out. This very much could just be something you have to deal with up to level 60.
That is true, not an SOD, and I think that's why it's such an important like talking point as well, Vinterus. And that's why I'm thinking like maybe like a good way of going around it in terms of PvE, like raid, damage and equalization of DPS in a little bit, could be like increasing the armor a little bit of the bosses, like make them have a little bit more armor so the melee wouldn't be as crazy compared to casters. Because it does feel pretty shitty, like if you're a caster, why would you bring a caster when you could just bring like a bunch of melee? But yeah. Hunter's the true easy most because they don't have to worry about range or mana. Hunters farm at the moment, even though they got nerfed so much.
Though, spell ranks are a big part of Classic. Sometimes you want to down rank or use a more mana efficient spell. Moving this whole system to scaling as it was in Kata seems like a big step. Perhaps base mana costs are starting to make a bit more sense now though. I mean, I'm just saying, my Shadow Bolt costs 110 mana, and my best rank of Life Tap restores 75 mana. I swear I'm getting an RSI for how much I'm having to tap this season. And I'm a Warlock, so you could say I don't have anything to complain about. Next though.
Shaman and mana druid issues, Shaman and druid mana issues are bad. Not when you got Shamanistic Rage. If you got Shamanistic Rage, you will probably just about go on every single boss fight if you time it really perfectly, right? But yeah, mana issues is really bad early on. Early Shaman is going to be disgusting the next phase with recent overload buff plus good spell ranks level 40. Yeah, I agree. I think the meta will definitely be a lot different level 40. But melee might still continue to dominate in PvE.
Oh, it's not just spell ranks, it's scaling, straight up scaling. You know, back when WoW first came out, barely any gear had spell power on it, or if it did, it was a very small amount. The idea was that casters put on intellect, and this would allow them to cast more spells, and therefore remain relevant over the course of a fight. Eventually, though, Blizzard did start amping up spell power on items as they realized intellect alone was not enough. This is why typically, when you're leveling in vanilla, nothing really has spell power on. However, these days now, we have a pretty good idea that spell power is rather good, in fact. Ironically, half the casters in the game are still going even with the updated gear, but still. What I'm getting at is that spell power equals damage for casters.
Ooh,
and it's a
that's insane though. That's a lot of spell power level 25.
Thing at is that spell power equals damage for casters.
Like that's actually crazy. A lot of spell power for level 25.
And it's a purely secondary stat. Intellect is nice and everything, you need intellect for a good mana bar, but given the choice, you're gonna take spell power for damage. What do melee need for damage? They need agility and strength. But they also benefit from both of these stats for attack power and crit. On the caster side, they have intellect for extra mana so they can cast more. It also gives a small amount of crit. They have spirit, which is meant to aid mana regeneration. And then they have no stats that directly boost their spell damage. It's almost as if something was missing here, like a stat called willpower, where 1 point equals 1 or 2 spell damage. And though the new raid gear and updated raid quests start to fix this stat imbalance, physical
I think intellect gives spell crit though, right? Or am I crazy?
Damage dealers just get more out of their stats. They scale with percentage buffs such as the ZG buff when we can get that eventually, or Blessing of Kings or Aspect of the Lion. But more importantly than that perhaps is that they can crit with nearly all of their main attacks. So if anything I'll mention today, I'd say this has the biggest potential to change in some shape or form, and I'm 100% sure Blizzard knows how impactful this is, but as we currently are, only direct attacks can crit. Damage over time effects cannot crit in vanilla, so everything an Affliction Lock does basically, Shadow Priest, Boomkins, and so on.
Okay, to be fair though, if all these things could crit every tick, that would be nasty. Okay, if every dart could crit that a Warlock put on, that would be a little bit busted. Okay, I'm just gonna be honest here. Okay, only in PvP. Yeah, I mean for PvE it actually might be balanced having it like that, but for PvP it would be broken.
They're all severely hamstrung by this game design choice. Moreover, channeled effects cannot crit.
Maybe they could keep up a Warrior. Yeah, but then the issue comes in. Okay, should we just allow dots to crit in PvE, but not in PvP? Because if that works in PvP, PvP is completely different, right? It's a completely different story than PvE. Dispel is a thing with no cooldown. Not every class can dispel. Imagine rogue dots and poisons critting. Yeah, I mean, imagine that. Imagine the scorpion poison critting as well, right?
So Blizzard, Rain of Fire, Hellfire, Mindflay, Hurricane. I hate to pick on the Boomies and Shadow Priests here, but this is why it's not looking too pretty at the moment. And yes, there are melees with very impactful damage over time effects too, such as Deep Wounds, or Saber Slash especially come to mind. And maybe one day everything should crit, as it can in Wrath, but I think just focus on the classes who are very dependent on these effects at the moment. When you think about it though, it's always seemed a bit strange that it was the case that these types of abilities worked in this way. I'm not entirely sure why, either. Then again, Vanilla is full of cloth gear with strength on it, and originally had a debuff limit of 8.
It definitely would be a lot different though if that could crit. Separate PvP and PvE tuning ruins my immersion. I get that. I get that a little bit. For sure. Warriors are parsing mad now. Warcraft logs, what happened? It is just the gear that they accumulated. Warriors just become powerful by nature whenever they have a lot of gear. And since the gear we get at level 25 is actually so insanely good, they just do crazy amount of damage, right? Like that's just warrior scaling for you.
Oh, yeah.
I do wonder though how this will affect the future phases, right?
Maybe someone just did this and everyone went with it. But perhaps certain damage over time or channeled effects should be able to crit via a rune or something of the like in the future, because purely scaling off of spell power just isn't going to cut it. And then of course there are spell resists and partial resists too. 2.5 to 3 seconds of spell casting. 80 to 100 mana spent, your spell flies towards the boss and resist. Ouch. Melee do have an equivalent for this too though, through glancing blows as well as dodge, block, all of those things. It's just when a melee attack misses or is glanced, your next swing comes in a few moments later for another that's just how it is, man. You play a caster, sometimes you get resists, dude. It is what it is. I will say, when I played on Guzu, it sucked, man. Channeling up that juicy Shadow Bolt and then it flies to the boss and then like no damage. It does suck, man. And yes, melee do suffer on the turtle boss in BFD, but man, some of those bosses in there have a whole lot of bonus spell resist. Then again, this is very vanilla-like, so maybe it is what it is. Saying everything I've gone through in this video though, I just want to remind you again, we are in a super early version of the season. We're capped at level 25. And we do not know what's coming in the future. I think Blizzard have been doing a great job of rapidly balancing the classes as well as the game as a whole. So maybe some of the things I've gone over here are already in line to be addressed. And remember, the logs I showed at the start are for the raid, and the raid is basically a bunch of single target encounters which take a few minutes each. There is more to the game than that. There's PvP, there's gold farming, there's dungeons, there'll be more leveling in the future. And in all of these other areas, casters are doing just fine. Either way, I thought this was something worth talking about for the season. I know I
think it is. It's like, it's not just like, oh, complaining about my class is not good or whatnot. I think it's important to also keep in mind that like, we need to keep giving feedback of what we think about certain things, right? And like, you know, for the game to be the best it can be.
Except for more changes in the future.
I think so.
But discovering that basically every melee spec is better than basically every caster spec in the raid is not quite the discovery that I was hoping to make. And I've been tracking Warcraft logs since early in the season. The physical damage dealers are only trending up. Anyways, let me know your thoughts on this topic. Should Blizzard change things? Do you think they already know about these and they're aiming to fix some of these problems later on? Let me know below. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a rogue ult to go and level. So, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. And I'll see you all on the next one very soon.
Casters are molding, dude. They are molding. It was an interesting video though, with a lot of good talking points though. I will say, I don't think you should separate this the class tuning from like PvE to PvP, like make certain things work in PvP but not in PvE and vice versa. But I think a very, very easy way of really dealing with this issue, if it is becoming a glaring issue with melees being way too strong in raids, could just be to tune up the armor a little bit. Like, just make the bosses have a little bit more armor to, like, equalize it a little bit, right? So, like, make melee still really powerful, but maybe not to that degree, right? I think that is the easiest fix to it, really. Give bosses more armor, right? That's it. Like, just make them do a little bit less damage to bosses whenever you're, like, a melee or, like, physical damage. I'm not sure bringing down all the melee is a good solution for casters being too weak. I mean, I feel like it could be a way of doing it instead of like buffing everything, because like if you end up buffing all the classes like over and over and over again, we're gonna end up at a level 60 where like it's gonna be completely overtuned like crazy. Like every class is gonna do ridiculous amount of damage, right? Because we're trying to like equalize every single class and make them all the same, right? Which is not a good thing, I suppose. Didn't they nerf resistances on the bosses? Yes, they did reduce resistances on bosses, which also he went over here at the end of the video. This right here. So every resistance went from 75 to 25, right? So like the Shadow Resist, Nature Resist, and Arcane Resist went down, which in turn makes casters do more damage as well. So that's way of doing it, like tuning the raids like such. But obviously melees are still absolutely blasting. 20 years on Blizzard still can't tune this game. Is anyone surprised? I mean, I feel like you gotta give them a little bit of cut them a little bit of slack here. Like they're literally like doing a whole new raid like without any PTR, without any testing, and like we're kind of just thrown into it with a new meta we've never seen before, with gear we haven't seen before either, right? But it's not really new. I mean, it is though. It kind of is. It is new. It's like completely new gear. It's like a completely new like runes and like abilities for classes we've never seen before like that. That is quite new. I will say, like, overall though, I'm still having a ton of fun with SOD. Like, I'm loving it. I think it's important though to talk about these things as well. Like, there could be issues because you don't want to make them become worse and worse and worse down the road, right? So I like that. I like this. I like that they're going kind of like a very, very just in-your-face approach with the game, and then we're just kind of doing it as we go. I'm happy with it. It's totally new. Retail has already had the same balancing phase. The first phase of having PTR. Classic is way harder to balance due to its nature and no PTR. Tail will take time, and they're doing great. I agree. I agree. It's Discovery. It's supposed to be a mess. Yeah, and having it kind of be a little bit of a messy situation also can be a part of the fun, right? Like some classes are just OP, then they get nerfed a little bit, then other classes start getting good, right? Would you say that you're discovering it as you go? Yeah, exactly. Not only is it new, but it's only new, but it's also for the devs working on it. Nobody that works in SOD was on vanilla. The game was not the same as retail. Yeah. I agree, but I still think that that they're doing a good job with it.